How does a little girl from Brooklyn, mocked for her nose, her looks, even told she would never be anybody, rise to hold the rare crown of EGOT, an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony? How does the voice once echoing through the stairwells of a poor apartment become the soundtrack of weddings, of heartbreak, of American history itself? Barbra Streisand is not just a singer, she is a force who shattered every rule of beauty, power, and art. Yet behind the glittering lights of Funny Girl, behind the Oscars, the Grammys, and the sold-out concerts, lies a woman scarred by fear, by loneliness, by controversies that shook even her own devoted fans. At 83, she remains untouchable and fragile at once, a legend who built an empire from pain and yet still carries wounds that no award can heal. Tonight, we revisit her journey, not just the triumphs, but the tragedies, the scandals, the secrets that made her human, because the real question is not how Barbra conquered the world, but how she survived it. Barbra Streisand's story begins in the shadows of loss. She was only 1 year old when her father died suddenly, leaving her mother alone, bitter and burdened by poverty. In their cramped Brooklyn apartment, money was scarce, arguments constant, and affection rare. Her mother discouraged dreams, urging Barbra to settle for a safe secretarial life. Her stepfather was crueler still, mocking her crooked teeth and ugly nose with words that cut deeper than any wound. "You'll never be anybody." At school, she was an outsider, skinny, messy-haired, and odd. Even her drama teacher dismissed her, insisting she lacked stage potential. Yet in the stairwell of her apartment, where the walls echoed her voice back to her, Barbra found a sanctuary. Neighbors began to recognize the girl who sang in the shadows, not realizing those echoes were shaping one of the greatest voices in American history. Every insult became fuel, every rejection a reason to fight harder. She would not change her nose, she would not change her teeth, and above all, she would not change herself. Those wounds of childhood did not break her. They built the resilience of a legend. From the stairwells of Brooklyn to the dazzling lights of Broadway, Barbra Streisand's rise felt almost impossible. In 1962, she landed a small role in I Can Get It For You, Wholesale. It wasn't the lead, yet audiences left the theatre talking only about her. That same year, Columbia Records took a chance on her unusual voice. The result? Her debut album in 1963 won Album of the Year at the Grammys, an achievement almost unheard of for a woman so young. But her defining moment came with Funny Girl. On Broadway in 1964, her performance as Fanny Brice was electric. When Hollywood adapted it into film in 1968, Barbra won the Academy Award for Best Actress, one of the rare ties in Oscar history, sharing the honor with Katharine Hepburn. Through the 1970s, she became unstoppable, the way we were captured. The heartbreak of a generation, while A Star Is Born made her not only the film star, but also the voice behind Evergreen, which swept both the Oscar and Grammy. Each success was proof that the girl once mocked for her looks had redefined what it meant to be a star, on her own terms. Behind the applause and glitter, Barbra Streisand longed for something far simpler, love that would last. At just 21, she married fellow actor Elliot Gould. Together they shared a tiny New York apartment, chasing dreams while raising their son, Jason. But as Barbra's career soared, their marriage cracked. Gould later admitted, "Barbra became more important than the two of us." In Hollywood, fame can be a third partner, one that too often wins. After the divorce, Barbra's romances became headlines of their own. With Canada's Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, she found an intellectual equal, a man who charmed her with wit and vision. Yet the intensity frightened her, and distance pulled them apart. Later, she was seen on the arm of Don Johnson, television's golden boy, their brief affair glowing under flashbulbs before fading in private silence. Even tennis prodigy Andre Agassi fell for her, a love both passionate and controversial for its 28-year age gap. Each relationship promised companionship, yet left her lonelier still. Only in 1996 did Barbra finally discover a steadier kind of love with actor James Brolin, a bond built not on spectacle but on trust and independence, a refuge after decades of turbulence. At the height of her fame, when the world expected confidence, Barbra Streisand was quietly unraveling. In 1967, during a massive concert in Central Park before more than 100,000 fans, she suddenly forgot her lyrics. The silence that followed haunted her far longer than the applause. That single lapse grew into a crippling fear, stage fright so severe she withdrew from live performances for nearly 3 decades. While her peers toured the globe, Barbra retreated into the safer spaces of recording studios and film sets. To the public, she was dazzling and untouchable. In private, she wrestled with anxiety so sharp it stole her sleep, her peace, and her joy of singing. For an artist whose voice defined generations, the stage itself had become an enemy. It wasn't until 1994 that she dared to return. Madison Square Garden lit up as she stepped into the spotlight again. Tickets vanished within hours, and her televised concert swept 5 Emmy Awards. What began in fear ended as triumph, a reminder that even legends can falter, but the courage to rise again can transform a wound into history's most unforgettable comeback. Even legends are not spared from missteps. For Barbra Streisand, controversy often walked hand in hand with her fame. In 2003, a lawsuit meant to protect her privacy spiraled into what is now famously called the Streisand effect. By suing to remove aerial photos of her Malibu estate from an environmental website, she inadvertently magnified attention. What she tried to hide became known worldwide, a lesson in how silence sometimes speaks louder than secrecy. Her candor in politics also drew fire. A lifelong supporter of the Democratic Party, she spoke out passionately against Republican presidents, from George W. Bush to Donald Trump. Admirers praised her courage, but critics accused her of mixing art with partisanship. Few artists divided public opinion as sharply as she did. Perhaps the harshest backlash came in 2019. Speaking about Michael Jackson's abuse scandal, Barbra acknowledged the pain of the victims but added words many deemed insensitive. Outrage erupted, forcing her to clarify and apologize. These moments did not erase her artistry, but they revealed her complexity, a woman fearless in expression, imperfect in delivery, yet always unafraid to confront the world, even when the cost was her own reputation. In her later years, Barbra Streisand found comfort not in grand stages, but in the quiet sanctuary of her Malibu home. There, she built a whimsical basement shopping mall filled with vintage clothes, dolls, and even a frozen yogurt stand, a private world where she could finally breathe outside the spotlight. Her greatest companions were not industry elites, but her dogs. When her beloved Samantha passed in 2017, Barbra chose to clone her, bringing Miss Violet and Miss Scarlet into her life. "You can't clone a soul," she admitted. "But when I look into their eyes, I see Samantha." Yet Barbra never retreated completely. In 2024, she received the Genesis Prize and donated the entire award to causes supporting women's health, climate action, and human rights. A year later, at 83, she released The Secret of Life, Partners, Volume 2, her 55th entry into the Billboard Top 40, an achievement unmatched by any other female artist. Her legacy is more than records sold or awards collected. It is the story of a woman who refused to alter herself for approval, who turned wounds into music, and who carved a path for future generations of women to follow. Barbra Streisand's journey is not just the tale of a superstar, it is the story of a human being who refused to bend to the world's narrow definitions. She was mocked for her nose, dismissed for her looks, silenced by fear, and bruised by love. Yet she transformed each wound into art, each heartbreak into a song that carried millions through their own struggles. Her imperfections did not diminish her greatness, they defined it. At 83, she stands as both fragile and formidable, proof that resilience does not mean the absence of pain, but the courage to live authentically in spite of it. Her name rests among the immortals of culture, but her legacy is not carved only in golden statues. It lingers in the stairwell where a young girl once sang to herself, in the films that captured our hearts, and in the voice that still dares to break silence. So perhaps the question is not what Barbra Streisand achieved, but what we can learn from her. Do we have the strength to remain ourselves, even when the world tells us we are not enough? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of legends who turn shadows into light.